Hello, everyone. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. I'll tell you, folks, this is one of those storylines that really got me thinking. The moment I heard that Cassius might be caught while trying to take James away, I couldn't help but shake my head. Not because I thought he was some cold-hearted villain, but because sometimes the most painful mistakes come from people whose emotions are stronger than their judgment. As someone who has watched General Hospital for years, I've seen plenty of kidnappings, betrayals, and shocking twists, but this situation feels different to me. There's a sadness hanging over it that's hard to ignore. The way I see it, Cassius never truly wanted to hurt James. In fact, everything we've seen suggests the exact opposite. The man genuinely cares about that little boy. He knows James has a loving home with Maxie, Spinelli, and the rest of his family. Deep down, I think Cassius understands that James is exactly where he belongs. That's what makes this entire situation so heartbreaking. Sometimes people know the right thing to do, but their emotions push them towards something else. What really stands out to me is how desperate Cassius has become. With the Cold Fusion project nearing completion and his plans to leave town falling into place, it feels like he's staring at the end of a chapter he never wanted to close. I can almost imagine the weight he's carrying. Knowing he may never see James again could be enough to make him throw caution to the wind and take one last risk. Lord have mercy. We've all seen people do foolish things when they're saying goodbye to someone they love. But here's where things take an even sadder turn. Just when Cassius appears ready to make his move, Cody steps in and stops him. To me, that's the moment that reveals who Cassius really is. If his goal had been to truly steal James away forever, he could have fought harder. Instead, he leaves James behind. That decision speaks volumes. It tells me that despite all his mistakes, despite all the lies and deception surrounding his identity, there is still a part of him that genuinely wants what's best for the boy. Of course, none of that changes how dangerous the situation has become. Once people see Cassius with James, they're naturally going to assume the worst. In Port Charles, appearances can be just as powerful as the truth, and this is exactly the kind of misunderstanding that can destroy whatever chance he has left of finding peace. The moment the word kidnapping enters the conversation, nobody is going to stop and listen to his explanations. And if I'm looking at the bigger picture, what worries me most isn't the failed attempt itself, it's what comes next. Cassius has enemies everywhere. There are people who want him captured, people who want revenge, and perhaps even people who want him dead. His escape plan already looked risky, but now it feels almost impossible. Every road ahead seems darker than the last. The closer he gets to freedom, the more danger seems to surround him. That's why I can't shake this feeling that Cassius may be heading toward a tragic ending. Good grief. Sometimes General Hospital has a way of taking a character who finally starts showing their humanity and placing them directly in the path of disaster. Whether he intended to kidnap James or simply wanted one final goodbye may not matter anymore. The damage may already be done. And if Cassius does end up paying the ultimate price, I think the saddest part will be knowing that his last choices were driven by love, even if they led him down the wrong road. What really stayed with me after watching that preview was how quickly the entire situation spiraled out of control. Just a short while ago, this felt like the story of one troubled man struggling with his conscience. Now, it feels like every road in Port Charles is leading straight toward Cassius. When I saw him leaving that building with James, while Cody stood nearby watching, I couldn't stop thinking about how many different emotions must have been running through his mind. Fear, regret, hope, and desperation all seemed to be written across that moment. It didn't look like someone celebrating a victory. It looked like someone making one last gamble because he believed he had no better option left. Then Cody appears, and that changes everything. I don't believe Cody was looking at Cassius with simple suspicion. To me, he looked genuinely concerned about James. That's exactly how any reasonable person would react. If you see a man secretly taking a child away, your first instinct isn't to ask questions. Your first instinct is to protect that child. That's why I think this misunderstanding is almost impossible for Cassius to escape. Even if his heart was in the right place, his actions told a completely different story. As the old saying goes, actions speak louder than words, and in that parking lot, Cassius's actions painted a picture that nobody was going to ignore. Felicia's voice saying that Nathan isn't who he claims to be only makes the situation even more dangerous. I've been thinking about that line ever since I heard it. It wasn't delivered like a casual observation. It sounded like a warning. Once people begin connecting the dots about Cassius's real identity, the sympathy that a few people may still have for him could disappear overnight. Trust is one of those things that's easy to lose and almost impossible to earn back. Cassius spent so much time hiding behind another man's name that now, even when he may be telling the truth, very few people will be willing to believe him. But then the preview takes an even bigger turn, and that's the part that honestly gave me goosebumps. Out of nowhere, we see John Oliver's mysterious character arriving with heavily armed men wearing tactical gear while a helicopter waits in the background. Well, folks, that's not the kind of entrance you make for a routine investigation. That's the kind of operation you launch when the target is considered extremely dangerous or extremely valuable. The entire atmosphere changes in an instant. Suddenly, this isn't just about James anymore. This has become an international level pursuit, and Cassius finds himself right in the middle of it. I have to admit, I smiled a little when I first heard that John Oliver would be appearing on General Hospital because it sounded unexpected. But after seeing those scenes, I realized this isn't going to be a lighthearted cameo at all. Whoever Z turns out to be, he carries himself with confidence and authority. He doesn't look confused. He doesn't look hesitant. He looks like a man who already knows exactly what he's came to do. That alone makes him a frightening addition to the story. Sometimes the quiet characters are the ones you should fear the most because they don't waste energy making threats. They simply carry out the mission. What also caught my attention was the helicopter sitting behind them. Now, maybe some viewers will focus on the action, but I kept thinking about what that helicopter actually represents. To me, it says preparation. It says planning. It says the WSB isn't showing up hoping to find Cassius. They fully expect to find him. They expect movement. They expect resistance. They may even expect casualties. You don't assemble that kind of operation unless you've decided this is the moment to bring everything to an end. And where does that leave Cassius? Honestly, I don't see many good options anymore. Everywhere he turns, another obstacle appears. Cody is standing in his way. His true identity is beginning to unravel. The WSB is closing in. Z has apparently entered the picture. Ross Cullum is likely involved as well. It almost feels as though the walls are closing around him from every direction. I've watched enough soap operas over the years to know that when a character reaches this point, they usually make one final decision that changes everything. The only question is whether that decision saves someone else or destroys themselves. What makes this story especially emotional for me is that Cassius doesn't seem driven by greed anymore. Earlier in his journey, people could certainly question his motives, but now I see someone who's exhausted, someone who's carrying more guilt than confidence, someone who knows the odds are stacked against him but keeps moving anyway because there's one person he desperately wants to protect. Whether viewers forgive him or not is another matter, but I think it's hard to ignore that his priorities have shifted. James has become the center of every decision he makes, even if those decisions continue leading him into disaster. The tragedy is that good intentions don't erase bad choices. Cassius may believe that once he escapes Z and the WSB, he'll somehow find a way to return James safely to the people who love him. Maybe that's the plan he's been telling himself all along. But life rarely works that neatly, especially in Port Charles. Once fear takes over, nobody stops to examine motives. They react to what they see, and what they see is a man taking a child and running. That's enough to turn nearly everyone against him before he ever gets the chance to explain himself. The more I think about it, the more convinced I become that this preview isn't building toward a simple chase scene. It's building toward an emotional collision where every secret, every lie, and every painful decision finally catches up with Cassius. Lord have mercy. Those are usually the moments General Hospital delivers best. The action may grab everyone's attention at first, but it's the heartbreak afterward that stays with you. As I finished watching the preview, one thought kept running through my mind. I don't think the biggest question is whether Cassius can outrun the WSB. I think the real question is whether he can find even a small measure of redemption before his luck finally runs out. With Z arriving, armed agents moving into position, and the truth spreading faster than ever, it feels like the clock has almost reached midnight. And if my instincts are right, the next chapter won't just determine Cassius's future. It could reshape the lives of James, Maxie, Cody, and everyone pulled into this heartbreaking storm.